Welcome to the latest webinar in the Elemental Talks programme. Our topic today, Building Intelligence, How Smart Data Can Drive Decision Making. It's our session sponsored by Danfoss. Your chair for the next 60 minutes, my name's Jim McClellan, founder and editor SustMeme, home to both the magazine and the top 500 rankings. Joining me on the panel of experts this afternoon are Claire Penny, Global Digital Evangelist in Vicara, Nick Tune, Digital Director UK and Europe Atkins, Professor Will Swan, Director Energy House Laboratories, University of Salford, and Jan Schermacher, Vice President Danfoss Climate Solutions. It's all live with a Q&A to finish, so pop your questions. You should probably see a little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Type them in, you pose them, I'll ask them, they'll answer them, as I said on social. So a little bit about Elemental. Webinar forms part of the program hosted and produced by Elemental, www.elementalexpo.com. It's the online community for professionals focused on innovation in heat, water, air and energy, the vital elements within the built environment now and in the future. You find a full diary of events on the website, range of upcoming webinars. You can also now view the back catalogue, broad range of hot topics, all available on demand. Who's who list of great speakers, and everything is free to access. There's also in-depth interviews to watch, longer form articles, one on the Pulse just penned by myself recently and published on robots at work beneath our feet. So lots of lockdown infotainment to enjoy. Now, very brief intro from me before we kick off. The digital age. Rolling digitalisation of the built environment is progressively transforming all parts of the sector, from property and real estate, by design engineering, construction, installation. We live in an increasingly sensor-rich world of smart buildings. According to research by Statista into smart buildings across the EU, total Internet of Things, IoT active connections, there were just 5 million in 2016. They're forecast to multiply 30 times within just a decade, so reaching 154.06 million by 2025, mushrooming spectacularly. So as part of our Elemental Talks program of smart buildings, we've already run sessions on IoT and automation, how commercial buildings work in a zero carbon economy, plus the user experience. You can check them all out in that on-demand library. This webinar will bring together many of those insights, introduce some new perspectives to drill down into how smart technologies and systems can really inform best practice, optimize performance, and influence behavior. Ultimately, we're exploring how building intelligence and smart data can drive decision-making at all levels, plus asking what is the true cost of dumb buildings. So, as we start to explore digitalisation of the built environment, where we are, where we hope to get to in the not too distant future, I'd like to begin by asking each of our panelists to introduce themselves, share their perspectives and some opening insights. So briefly, it's who are you, where do you fit into the puzzle, where is the UK right now in its journey towards digitalisation? So first, from the perspective of a digital evangelist, Claire.
Hi, thanks, Jim. Yeah, so Claire Penny, native UK citizen from Stoke-on-Trent, but don't hold that against me, now living in Ireland. So I kind of cut my teeth in IBM. I was tagged and stamped an IBMer for many years, 19 years in total. And I worked in all areas around buildings, both operationally and then on into software and smart buildings. And way back in about 2006-07, I worked with a really smart group of people in an innovation project, looking at how could we use the data that was being generated at the asset level within a building to make those buildings more environmentally sound. And so we did this via what everybody knows today as fault detection rules. And the smart people I worked with built these rules. And what actually materialized from that whole innovation project was that the environmental savings were the gravy, were the icing on the cake. What we actually established were shorter times for operational activities, including planned preventative maintenance and reactive maintenance. So we're actually getting 3 wins out of using that data effectively. So that was really exciting. And then what happened in my career was that because I was involved and very passionate about this, I moved from the operations side into the software side, and then started to evangelize smart buildings, moved on into AI, and then really started to get very passionate about digital twin. So I left IBM. I was only going to stay in IBM, by the way, for 2 years, ended up staying 19 years. So I left IBM, joined a small IoT startup, really got digging into the nuts and bolts of IoT, and then have just had the opportunity to join Invocara, where we really deliver digital twins and digital twin platform, and really enable people to go that next step into how we really use this data from design construction all the way through into operations. And so my perspective on where the UK is today, I think the Centre for Digital Built Britain is absolutely fantastic and doing really fabulous work, loads of research work, moving down that chain of being able to show what's going on. But if I look at, countries that may be in a better position, like the Middle East, they're actually really doing this. They are taking digital from design construction and through into operations. And yes, they do have the benefit of building new cities, net new cities, etc., and one purse to kind of pull from. It's all really great stuff. But I think the UK really got to stop talking about this now and start doing it. Okay, so get off the pot and start doing it. So that's my take.
Excellent. Thanks, Claire. Time to walk the talk. So, Nick, as an innovator and transformation enabler, where are we at present?
Thanks, Jim. Where are we at present? Well, I think we've taken a massive leap forward over the last year. In thanks to, maybe that's the wrong phrase, and I think we all can appreciate this, in thanks to the situation we've been put in because of COVID-19. And there's that kind of joke, isn't it? What's been the biggest thing that's allowed digital transformation to happen? Is it your boss? Is it whatever? No, it's COVID-19, and that is certainly the truth of the matter. So that's made a big change. Also, there's the whole area around Grenfell and the golden thread around data, and I think that's helped shift people's thinking. So I'd say we've made a big movement, and people are starting to wake up in the industry around just going from documents to data. I still think there's a huge way to go, but only a few years ago. So I was involved in setting up a business in the UK called CoBuilder, and our whole raison d'etre was to basically help clients to specify what data they need, then the supply chain to be able to supply that data, which then goes right the way through to asset management to use that data. And we did this about 5 years ago, and I think we were too far ahead of the market, is the honest situation, because the market was still so used to just sharing PDFs. And finally, I think now, and I can speak with authority, as in leading the digital agenda in Atkins in UK&E, which is a 10,000 person business. Only now and recently are we looking at really structuring our data effectively and exploiting our data effectively as a business. And I think there's still many businesses who some are ahead of us, and some many are behind us. So I'd say we've moved forward hugely over the last year. People are realizing the benefit, the need for data coming away from documents, but there's still obviously a huge way to go yet.
Excellent, thank you, Nick. And yeah, good progress, but relatively late to the digital party, I guess, if you like. So, Will, as a research pioneer in intelligent applications for energy, your perspective on this, please.
Okay, so Energy House Labs is really about measuring things. That's essentially what we're interested in, and it's measuring the performance of buildings. And I suppose how we entered the sort of digital arena. I mean, when I first started as a researcher in my first project was building BIM models of houses. So it's interesting to see how BIM has come on, but even our predictions were wildly over optimistic, I think, in the 90s. Yeah. But where we entered it into the digital arena was really looking at the smart meter infrastructure, because we felt that would allow us to gather data more easily. And what that did over the last sort of 5 years has opened up, the whole digital and IoT as applies to the domestic market. and some of the work we've done around integrating, batteries and PV and electrical heating and electric vehicles for that matter has shown us that everything is optimizing for itself. So some of the integration piece to really drive value, certainly in the domestic sector, it needs to go on, but it is coming on in leaps and bounds. And 2 years ago we were trying to do a vehicle to grid project with a unnamed electric vehicle brand, where we had to open and close the door every half an hour to make sure the car didn't go to sleep. And now those kinds of problems are going away, and the house in terms of energy purely sits at the end of the energy system, as part of the energy system. It's not a dumb consumption node anymore. And I think the other thing is the benefits that we can realise out of that data as well, in terms of social care, in terms of health, in terms of understanding the performance of buildings and the retrofit agenda. So the opportunities are huge, but when you're sticking a screwdriver in something, you develop a nice cynical streak about it as well.
Excellent. Nice points made, and the integration piece is an important one, and a nod for social sustainability as well, because this is a people thing at the end of the day. It's not just assets and buildings and things. So Jan, come to you. As a market leader in smart climate solutions for buildings, what's your take on where we're at and where you're at?
Yeah, I think as a company, Danfoss as a company, we are bringing to market products and solutions to make buildings more sustainable, healthier, bringing higher comfort for people, mainly focused on HVAC and technical building systems. And we have both conventional portfolios, but we also have smart IoT-driven portfolios to do that. And we see a big increase in our let's say smart portfolio. This is growing very much. But still, you could see that this is still in its early stage. I think we need to realize, and it's not only for the UK, but it's in all the markets that we're witnessing this is a transformation. And it is the whole value chain of not only suppliers, but also the engineers and the developers and the installers that need to go through this transition to actually make this technology work. So I think this is what we see. So it's still early stages, but we do see a big increase in smart technology being used in buildings. And I think also now we also see it's not only, maybe before it was more a push from suppliers to the markets, but actually what we see now, which makes a difference, is that we see a much stronger pull from the market. And we're actually seeing building owners, developers actually requiring smart technology in their buildings. And this makes a change, and this will accelerate this transformation.
Excellent, nice point. And yeah, that demand can, like the blue touch paper, not just asking questions and showing interest, but actually investing, procuring, buying. Excellent pull through. So in the middle section of this debate, I'd like to really get into some of the thorny issues, the problems. I've called it challenges and conflicts. It's the difficult stuff. So I'd like to zoom in on some specifics, ask why so many buildings are frankly still dumb, why construction is yet to embrace the digital age, what's the problem, innovation, regulation, cost, culture, skills, what must change or accelerate for us to get smart. So getting into the meat of it here a bit, Nick, digital transformation, if it's still not mainstreaming, what's wrong with the business case? Is it lack of demand, lack of supply, lack of money, or just lack of understanding? What's wrong with it?
If we're talking, for instance, around housing, it's a lack of supply, I would say, is the thing that's hitting this the hardest, because it's not like when you can buy a manufactured product and you can pick out of 20 different products, and therefore then there's a competition to sell you the best product, and innovation happens.
Yep.
Where if you're looking to buy a house and you're fixed, it's about location. What's offered to you is incredibly limited. So because of that reason, there's not enough of a driver for the developers to need to innovate. So that's why it's stalling. So again, 20 years ago, we were doing passive houses and zero carbon houses, and we're still in a situation where we're still doing them in, maybe instead of 1s and 2s trials, we're now doing them in 10s. when it's not the standard, it's not the norm, and that's because there's not the driver. They don't need. There's a development of houses down the road from me where I live now. They don't need to make them smart buildings or zero carbon to sell them, because it's in a good location. They'll sell them no matter what. And I think that's the issue. So then it comes back to your question around, well, what needs to happen, how to drive it. Unfortunately, that means you need regulation, because the industry isn't doing it to itself. You have to have regulation, and the regulation has been relatively passive, I guess, excuse the pun. And again, slightly hopeful around Grenfell. I did a session recently around the golden thread of data and Grenfell, and there were speakers on there from the government of how they want data to be going right through from the early design phases, if you like, right the way to the operations of housing and buildings to enable that better decision making. So that I see as a big enabler to help it to happen. Unfortunately, as I say, we are still stuck in that situation where the supply won't necessarily do it for us.
Excellent, thanks. And yeah, a call there I'm hearing, if you like, for sticks as much as carrots potentially. So, and moving on, I'm seeing now some questions popping up from the audience. Do type them in, and we've got about 20 minutes at the end of the session to share them around the panel. So key in what you want to ask, and we'll try to answer them. So Will, coming to you, this more provocative few questions. A lot of energy efficiency and carbon reduction comes down to unsexy solutions like insulation and double glazing, which is very valuable. So challenging you, are smart technologies just bling?
What I would say is there's no point putting smart technologies in a rubbish building, and that's the number. And it's to some extent what Nick was alluding to is the way we've had building regulations. We were supposed to be zero carbon in 2016. People remember. So you have to have a good building, but I think the way the energy infrastructure is starting to work, we will have to have smart solutions. You cannot have multiple assets under control, a relationship with the distributed network operator, and half-hourly changes to your carbon intensity and price of your electricity, and expect somebody to manage that without something to help them make the decisions. So on the energy point of view, from the energy point of view, smart solutions are going to be an essential element of people driving value from their energy assets in their homes. But then on the other side of that, what we still need is resilient buildings. So, it's one of those ones where if we over-egg the pudding digitally and with smart, we can just end up creating more points of failure with sensors related to control, and having done lots and lots of field trials and having to go back and fix things and recover things. I understand that for a consumer is not a happy place to be. So we do need robust and resilient systems as well.
Excellent, thank you. And Jan, so I'm thinking Danfoss rebranded its sort of heating and cooling elements as climate solutions. I think maybe start of the year, but why is the wider industry not yet harnessing the potential of intelligent tech to address its climate responsibilities? It's 2021. Why the digital disconnect?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned before, I think we're at the start of a transformation. So I don't think that there is a full disconnect. I think it's starting to happen now, and we will see it increasing. As Nick said, of course, legislation will be a big driver, and will definitely help the adoption of smart technology to make buildings be more sustainable. We see some other drivers as well. I mean, there will be an increased focus on cost reduction if we talk about commercial buildings, for example. So moving the focus from capex to opex, we will see that. That will help as well, because digital solutions might be a bit more have a higher investment. They will bring you more returns as well. So if we change the focus there, and we see that happening as well. I think the other ones is that the workplace is becoming more and more a differentiator. If we talk commercial buildings, if we take office buildings, there's more and more recognition that the workplace needs to be a very safe place. There's a lot of focus about flexibility, use of buildings, flexible use of buildings. Smart technology data will help that. And I think that's an important driver as well. Lastly, I'd like to mention that more and more companies see sustainability as very important for their company, and as part of that branding, And you see that buildings become a big part of that brand image of companies, and having sustainable buildings, smart buildings that are enabling sort of this flexible workspace and are enabling higher energy savings and higher sustainability will definitely help there as well. So we see these drivers in the market.
Some nice points there. Yeah, especially post-pandemic, that agility, that responsiveness of physical assets is going to be increasingly crucial for owners and users alike. Claire, so last of the trickier, off the back of a career at IBM, does it not frustrate a self-styled evangelist that so many in real estate and FM supply chains are still digital heathens? Why is business culture in the built environment so slow to see the light?
Yeah, I mean, to answer the first part of that, yes, it does frustrate massively. And there's so many factors. We can have a whole webinar, I think, just on this one question. And a lot of it really comes down to the siloed nature of the way that the built environment is delivered, you know, the competitive siloed nature, which is really, really, you know, important in one sense, but is really holding us back in another sense. And the way that people are engaged contractually doesn't help innovation whatsoever, because it's all about my IP, keeping everything to myself, etc. And I heard on the radio yesterday, actually, a really interesting thing that's happened in the pharma industry with COVID. And just really high level, these industries, so, you know, your Pfizers, your AstraZenecas, your Sanofis, they're all collaborating together. And through that collaboration and even loaning, or, you know, they're not doing it for free, like there's still commercial benefit from this, but they're collaborating and loaning factories to, you know, to make it faster for the vaccines to be distributed and made. And through that collaboration, we've seen vaccines come out onto the market that normally take years in a really short time. So if you apply that to and they're, you know, completely competitive, completely siloed, etc. If you apply that, it's a loose analogy, but you apply that to the construction industry, if we could have some major event, which maybe in next year when people don't go back to the office, if that happens, I personally don't know if that will happen, but, you know, if it comes to the crux where all our pensions are wrapped up in buildings and all of a sudden the economy is completely falling over, that might be the catalyst that makes people collaborate and innovate together and come together. So I think it's the disparate nature of the industry, the highly competitive nature of the industry. And then if we look at, and it's changing massively, if we look to be a little bit controversial, at the demographics of the industry. You know, when I used to walk into facility management meetings, I can absolutely guarantee you I would be the only woman, and the rest of the table would be older gentlemen of a Caucasian background. You know, so you've got that single point of view. We've got that, we've always done it this way, why would we change it? You know, I'm very comfortable, I'm very risk averse. If you look at the way that facilities management companies in their defense are contracted by third parties, you know, by big companies, you will give me more for less. And if you want to keep your contract for the next 3 years, you'll give me even more for even less. That's not conducive to innovation. So these people want to deliver what they've been asked to deliver as effectively and as quickly as they possibly can, without breaking the bank. I mean, you can see it, it's a race to the bottom. So when you come in with your innovation, your technology, the very first thing that goes off in somebody's head is risk, 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 risk. Am I going to get fired for doing this? Right? My spreadsheet, it's worked perfectly well over the last 25 years. Why would I change that? But slowly, slowly, people are coming to realize actually there may be benefit, and it's up to the industry to show the benefits, the ROI of doing this. And then you've got on the other side, the building owners, right? So the building owners are like, you know, I've spoken to REITs and people like this, and oftentimes it's like, show me the money, show me the money. Why am I going to do this? Yep. Like, I have this building over here, it's fully stacked, everybody's happy. Yeah, you know, it might be a bit dated, whatever, but nobody's moaning to me. They're all in there. Why would I do this? Why would I spend money to do this, to bring in innovation? And then the third point on the operational side of it is people are running off, and you gave some lovely stats on how many IoT devices are going to be connected in the future. They're all siloed. Right, so I've realized as an IoT hardware developer, provider into the industry, that the money is in the data and the information. So, hey, you can almost have the device, the hardware for free, but you've got to pay me for the data. And then what happens is, with a multitude of clouds whole like, okay, so I've got to get my occupancy data there, my energy data over there, you know, my reliability data over there. And then it's like, oh, well, now I want a single pane of glass. Oh, well, then you got to go and pay for something else to get that single pane of glass. Oh, and by the way, they're not using the right protocol. I've got to change the protocols. The data is not standardized. Chaos, right? So this is another train coming down the track as well. So I told you we could have a whole webinar on this. I better be quiet.
Excellent. Well, actually, I've got one, little nice points made, and attitudes to risk and the cultural shift. I was just going to add, so I think it used to be sort of said of Silicon Valley type that the phrases were something like fail fast and fail first, or whatever it was. Could you imagine going into a built environment meeting and saying, what do you want to do, Claire? I want to fail first and fail fast. Are we still a long way from, surely culturally, they'd call security?
Massively, a million miles away from that. I mean, you do get people, and it's the acknowledge. I think people are going in and they are putting their toes in the water and they are doing a lot. You know, I can think of examples that I won't name, right, because that's not fair, where, you know, they've come out guns blazing, flags flying, smart building, etc., and then you hear nothing else about that building ever again. And that company doesn't go on then to deploy this fantastic stuff across their entire portfolio. You know, I know one use case where they were talking about smart bins, and it's a big multinational company, smart bins. They put smart bins in their smart building. They said, we will never do that again. Complete waste of money. It's like, oh, wow. Why is that then? He said, well, the cleaner just came and emptied the bins anyway. It's like, well, you have to do your business processes. You can't just put the tech in and expect the tech to work. You've got to inform people that you don't empty the bin until you're alerted to do so. So there's a whole business process change management piece that underlines this technology disruption as well, you know.
Excellent, thanks. Well, there we are. We've had a good chew at some of the more tricky issues here, but the last bit then, the last round of questions for the Q&A, and do send in your questions. Got a few on the screen and a few on LinkedIn and Twitter. So the last bit, we've looked at the downsides or the challenges. I'd like reasons to be cheerful. Let's look at how successful and sustainable approaches, you know, could really help innovation scale and roll out nationwide, and we'll have this intelligent culture spreading rapidly. So to start with, Jan, how can solutions providers really help drive the climate agenda onwards, upwards towards Paris and net zero? How can we go on that trajectory?
Yeah, I think as suppliers as in industry suppliers, we need to make more transparent how our technologies will actually help to achieve those targets. How our technologies will actually make buildings more sustainable. And I think it's not easy if you talk about technical building systems, right? I think we're used to look at more like we make building more sustainable. We do the insulation, we do the double glazed windows, we do the roof, and so on. And then we leave it at that, right? But I think we have a task as an industry now to explain the huge potential there is in technical building systems, and especially with smart technologies, and how we can bring with those technologies, how we can bring those targets closer to us. So I think that's one. Having said that, I think we need to point some fingers to ourselves as industry. Also, we need to also make this more complicated technology. We need to make it easy to use, right? So because the more complicated the technology, the sort of, you know, there will be a threshold and there will be a gap of people using this. So we need to make it easy to use, and we need to help to educate the market to use the technology. I think that's for us. We are, for example, we're supporting consulting engineers if they are specifying technology. We're supporting them to help them to make their designs in a way that it becomes more sustainable or that it becomes smarter. And I think it's the same with installers. If we can help them with smart commissioning tools to do that work in a better way, that will definitely accelerate this trend. So, like I said, making this complicated technology, making it easier to use, will be very important as part.
Excellent. Thank you, Jan. So to make smart easy is to make it really smart. Yeah. Nice. And Will, so what will the energy house of the future look like, and how soon will we be living there?
I think really with the Future Homes Standard, that's going to drive a very different way of putting together houses. And I think the volume house builders are starting to accept this. We've got a number of projects with big house builders who are looking to partner with smart technology providers, because they do see the value that is there in terms of driving the zero carbon agenda. And it's funny because when I sort of alluded to 2016, when we should have been zero carbon, the house builders never really felt it was coming, and it never did. You get the feeling there is a sense of urgency now. And obviously, as we move away from gas, those kind of electrical systems, storage, trading, attenuation, grid services. So what we're seeing now is a conversation between the smart technology providers, the systems providers, the controls providers, the house builders, the DNO, the energy companies, the electric car providers, and they're all looking for this integrated smart transport, heat and housing offer, because whoever gets that right will be able to generate some value. So some of the work we did a couple of years ago, you could generate £400 of savings by using smart technology on your energy system. And there are people proposing models where if your house is efficient enough and your batteries and systems are smart enough, you may have a very, very minimal energy bill, in the tens of pounds a year. So that's, for me, that's where the big wins are in terms of the zero carbon home. And I think, sort of going to what Jan said, it's about the evidence, about what works, and then actually ensuring that the regulation drives that as well, because the built environment is a very heavily regulated area, and housing particularly. And I think having those things work together better would really, really start driving smart into homes, which I think is where we have to end up.
Excellent, thanks. And Claire, so when and how will today's digital disruption become tomorrow's new normal? Mainstreaming. Go on, put a figure on it. How fast is that going to happen?
I've been wrong so many times on these things, seriously. I'll go down the annals of time of getting it wrong. So yeah, I mean, I would love it to be in the next 2 years, 100%. And I absolutely agree with Jan. Like, we have to make this simple. We really do. I mean, and you can pull out loads of examples of technology. Like, I love to give an example of, I don't know how many years ago it is now, everything's a blur, but about maybe 5 years ago, going to the airport and like trying to connect to the internet at the airport, onto the Wi-Fi, the airport Wi-Fi. Oh my God, you would need a degree, to kind of remember all the coding you needed and everything. And then just as you got on, it'd be time to get your flight. Now you walk in, you just say yes, give your email address, and you're on, right? We have to simplify this stuff. Stop making it so difficult. And like, people go, yeah, but it is difficult. Yeah, but sort of work that out and make it more simple. Do you know what I mean? Because they obviously have done that with Wi-Fi. They've obviously done that with smartphones. They've made it easier and more accessible and more usable. So I think there's a lack of looking at the UI and the UX of any of these technologies that are available in the marketplace. Like, for goodness sake, get design people in and get this sorted, get it usable. How many times have you seen a black screen and what looks like an Excel spreadsheet overlaid on top of it, and that's your UI? It's madness. So I think making it easy to use, less complex, security is obviously a given. You've got to do that, and more concrete examples, and then we'll be off and running. But the simplicity of and ease of use of things has to be paramount in everybody's mind.
Excellent, thank you. Another big tip for simplicity. And then finally, before Q&A, get those questions across. Nick, so how will digital strategies transform the built environment from the old cliche, being part of the problem, which realistically it is, to part of the solution for sustainable development? How can digital turn that around?
Yeah, I'd like to give a bit of an example, a bit of a case study. I'm working with the Welsh Government at the moment, and anyone who knows anything about Wales is they've got the Welsh Future Generations Act, which puts sustainability at the heart of decision making, which is a brilliant bit of legislation. I think they were the only government in the world to have that. And working with the highways team in Welsh Government, we're working with them on their digital strategy, and more importantly, their data strategy, about what data do they need to manage the highways asset in Wales effectively. Now, because of the future generations need, part of the digital strategy is, well, actually, what data do we need to improve sustainability outcomes for that highways network? And that's forcing us to then look at things like, well, what data do we need to be able to do embodied carbon calculations? How do we look at the carbon emissions based on the road user, the road network? So as you can see there, we've got, if you like, sustainability strategy program with a digital strategy, and the two are coming together nicely to help achieve, hopefully, better outcomes in that the roads that get designed have a lower carbon emissions, for instance, and the roads that get used, we can look at how we reduced carbon emissions associated with that. And then, if we look then at the buildings scale, we're doing lots of work with different cities and different property owners around how can we use things like, obviously, BIM, the digital twin, to manage the asset effectively. And working with Cardiff University, we're developing a digital twin solution called CUSP, which basically we're learning the energy performance of the building and using artificial intelligence and machine learning, then coming up with the optimized solutions to reduce that energy consumption of the building. So what I'm trying to say is there's, the whole kind of conversion of the digital strategy and the sustainability needs strategy. The one is, if you like, an enabler to achieve the other. So yeah, it's I think it's really helping move the sustainability agenda, take it forward for certain.
Excellent, thank you, Nick, and flying the flag for Wales, and didn't even have to mention the rugby, thankfully. So
big night tonight. Come on, the Scottish.
Moving swiftly on as an Englishman. So we'll get through to the live Q&A now. We've got a number of nice questions. We're opening it up to our virtual floor. As I said, you ask them, keep them coming. You pose them, I'll ask them. Jan, Will, Claire, and Nick will answer them. So first off, we've already had several exchanges between Will and somebody. So if I could just pick that up first, Will, because you've already...
I think it is a good point, because it's about good data, and I think it's, when we do a lot of work in social housing, the data can be quite poor in terms of the quality of the asset register. And actually there are, so I'm not, I do have some cynicism about it, but there are some interesting programs around using smart meter data to understand the performance of buildings and thereby pull together retrofit strategies. I suppose for my extent, it's when we talk about smart, it's lots of different things. So I think the argument I would make is, which I initially made, but I'm now backtracking a little bit, is that putting in a whole series of smart controls on a house that's just failing in terms of heating systems, in terms of fabric, it's not the first port of call for me. Actually things like dumb TRVs actually perform quite well and are a low point cost of entry compared to smart. But I do think where digital will, and certainly when we get the smart meters infrastructure going, will be able to tell us a lot more about the housing stock than we currently know about its performance. And particularly when we start seeing sort of a little bit of additional functionality and sensor data collection into things like consumer access devices and in-home displays, that will give us a better understanding of what's failing and what isn't in the housing stock. So I think that's, the houses are systems, and so you address them in different ways, and it's about the business case for smart. I think sometimes we can get a little bit overexcited with something and put it in without really having a compelling business case to do it. And I think that's, smart is like any other technology that we put in, whether it's smart controls, whether it's a whole series of sensor arrays, what is the business case, or what is the social business case, depending on the context, for putting that in. And we need to think clearly about having those, how are we going to use the data? So I do think probably the anonymous attendee, has a good point that data's always handy. I think I would probably argue it's about resilience. It's about putting the occupant at the middle of it. And if smart can help, then yes, but it's about having that intelligent discussion, as you said before, about putting the smart into smart.
Yeah, Jim, if I could add on that, as someone who kind of whole job is around technology, data in built environment, actually, I wholeheartedly agree that I would be starting on a building, and certainly housing, with a fabric first approach. So it's not about the smarts to begin with. It really is. It's like a pyramid. You know, we need to start with having the fabric right first. So what's the point in putting a highly efficient, smart heating system with a heat pump, etc., mechanical vent heat recovery, in a really leaky, poorly insulated house? It's a total waste of time, when your better return on investment would be spent on air tightness and insulation. So, you know, I kind of, I really want to get that point across first, as I totally agree with the sentiment in terms of that you've got to get the fabric right first.
Yeah, can I add into that as well? I think, though, if you think about all those smart technologies around indoor air quality, temperature, humidity, stuff like that, I mean, those data points are extremely valuable, and particularly if you're thinking about in homes and in office locations. So understanding that, you know, you would get the fabric of the building answers probably if you could understand what was going on internally. You know, if it was too hot, too cold, if you got, you know, if your air quality is really poor. And some air quality indicators give first hits around mold and damp and things like this, so you can pick those up really quickly. So I guess it's, you know, when you talk about smart systems within buildings, what exactly are you looking at? You know, are you looking at the assets themselves, or are you looking at what's going on inside and how that's impacting the people using the space, which is what it's all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at products like Switchy and HealthLink, they work very well, but the point of entry in terms of cost, is it the first place to go? I think if you're managing asset, it's a really powerful tool. I think the other thing, you know, we learn about sensor data is things about sensor drift, about sensor location, so there's a lot of slips, cup in lip, in terms of what is the validity of that data, without wanting to sound too academic about everything. But, you know, is that bit of data valid, and are we making the right decision on the right data? And there's a lot of learning around that side of things as well.
Yeah. When I was in IBM, like just across the meters where we were using AI to understand what was going on. I mean, we go to a customer and go, is this meter supposed to be off, you know, not working between these hours? And they're like, oh no. So you're absolutely right. I mean, this is going to be like, and you're making big decisions based on this information. So you've got to watch that side of the house as well.
Oh, and it's that having, and so it's about that intelligence, about sense checking it, because it's things, you know, we'll get things in cubic feet and people think it's in cubic meters, and all of that kind of stuff that goes on, and that is about, you know, a bit of human intelligence combined with it as well. So we have to understand that well.
Excellent, great. Well, a good pickup from the anonymous questions, just so the other viewers. Initially, they sort of challenged Will about, you know, whether smart really was a waste, putting it into what had been described as a poorly functioning building. They then added there's no point in fixing the fabric if you don't have the system. So in other words, a call for both. But the only point that we've sort of touched on, but this one about fuel poverty, I just wondered if we could just add a little social sustainability tweak to the question and ask, how are individuals who are fuel poor, how realistically are they going to leverage any data they're looking at? Do you think there's going to have to be a behaviour and education piece in order that the numbers they see, and even if they know they're bad, that they can actually get anything done? I wonder if anybody would just like to comment on the sort of social aspect of that as well.
Do you want me to have a go?
It looks like you're
right. I mean, fuel poverty, because we do loads of field trials. We do loads of field trials in social housing, and when you see it, you know it. And it's people heating with an oil-filled radiator in one room, and actually, to some extent, you know, what I find exciting about smart and energy and stuff isn't really touching those people. They've got underperforming boilers, underperforming fabric, poor air tightness, and all the things that Nick's alluded to. I think what data can help us do is perhaps evidence the extent of that, and actually inform that as a local and national policy issue better. Because I think, you know, when we went into homes and you're measuring temperatures of 10 degrees, you know there's something wrong there. And actually, is there a way that we can, you know, mass up that data and actually make it a much stronger argument, linking it to health data, linking it to, you know, so it for me, there is any data that you can use to form an argument to address fuel poverty is really valuable. I think that is the most important part.
Excellent, good response. So we've got some more questions. I think maybe one for you to kick off here, Jan, but taking these questions from Tom Erskine, who says smart solutions need to be the norm, but he asks, it's very easy for end users or developers to say smart is too expensive, and that's not always the case. We had this question before in the decarbonisation discussion this morning, and the idea of a green premium. So is there a smart premium, this misperception or misconception that it's going to cost more? So how do we start getting round that prejudice that it's going to be expensive?
Yeah, I think we need to take the focus away from capex for the initial investment and make it very clear on how the operational expenses can be reduced by smart technology, and that can be, and I think also I see, like you mentioned before, I think coming out of this pandemic, we will see a lot of companies having a lot of focus on their cost and cost reductions. And so I think operational costs of buildings will become more and more important. So I think this will definitely help that we move away from focusing on initial investments and trying to reduce that as much as possible by actually saying, okay, what technology can we use in this building that reduces our operational expenses to the largest extent? So we will have that discussions more and more going forward.
And Jim, if I could add on to that,
sure.
If that's okay. Yeah. So in Invocara, what we see when we're talking to developers now, when we show the digital twin and the possibilities from a digital twin platform, going right from an asset information model through to a project information model, through to an operations model, twin, if you like, so an asset twin, a project twin, and an operations twin, and building that up for them and showing them how the data is transformed into valuable information across each of these phases. And then when you get into the operations side of it, they're almost jumping out of their seat of the art of the possible. You know, I mean, one really simple use case from one property owner was, when I go in to do a job, I want to go in with the team, the right team, with all the right equipment once, because I don't want to keep disrupting people every time I go in. So just really simply understanding, it was just a simple pane of glass. The pane of glass is broken. I can measure it in the model. I know who supplied it. I know how much it cost or how I procured it. Let's get that bought. I know the team that can install it. Boom. I just go in. I don't even have to go in to measure it. Right, it's reported broken. I can do all of that from the desk and get it in one time. And then if you build that up into, what you can do with IoT devices and energy, etc., and build it and understand those assets that you have procured that are performing brilliantly for you and cutting down on emissions and cutting down on operational costs, then that's how you show these people that it's not costly, that it's actually going to be extremely beneficial to them, because they will be able to show that they've got a really well-run building and to in the future be able to show exactly how much it's costing to run that building. And then when they come to sell it, the asset is much more valuable. The physical asset is much more valuable because it's got that digital asset attached to it.
Exactly, it's that kind of ROI you talked about, but it's also just making the business case better, to be honest. There is an onus on the smart industries to make the case better. And I'm picking up a question. This one's come through the chat, not the Q&A. It's from Oyars Tisnesis, and they're asking to the panel, could you give more assurance about training? I believe there's a large skills gap, I guess they're referring to, in terms of knowledge of smart systems and data usage. We maybe touched on the end users, the occupiers, how they interpret the data they are getting or seeing. Skills, training, how does the industry going to gear up? These kind of numbers we're talking about for rollout and deployment, we actually got the bodies to deliver on those promises. I wonder who'd like to take that. Skills, training, industry, capability.
Yeah, I think this is what we see a lot of suppliers start doing, to work with contractors, work with installers to make sure that they understand the products, that they are able to install them in a proper way. And I think that is needed, because it is, like I said before, it is a transformation also. And it's different if you need to install a radiator valve or if you need to install an IoT device in a building or in a house. It's different to make it work. So I think we need to spend a lot of time and focus on actually doing trainings and making sure people have the right competences to be able to use these technologies. Otherwise, we'll be stuck. There will be a demand side from more and more building owners asking for the technology and the industry pushing for the technology, but we're actually not getting into markets. So working with engineers, working with installers, contractors to do that is essential.
Maybe I could ask maybe also Claire and Nick, of course, it's not just about installers, for example, consultants, engineers, and maybe the built environment is competing with tech companies, you know, different companies for talent. So in terms of the consultancies and is it going to bring in that talent at those kinds of levels in competition with automotive, maybe going digital with tech company, with all those other disciplines that are basically after the same individuals?
Yeah, I can come in on that. So yes is the answer in terms of the fighting against the tech. And, you know, even in like Atkins, you know, we've lost some staff to some, you know, what you call tech companies, even though we're trying to get more into that space ourselves. Actually, I was going to come on to a slightly different point, actually, which was really about the end user. And I think historically, we've done ourselves no favors as an industry, because the user interfaces for these smart systems have been designed by, I think, by engineers, which is the worst thing you could possibly do. If, you know, anyone who's kind of gone to a kind of, you know, a supposed to be intelligent system, you know, whether it's Trend or whether you're working with, say, you know, a Schneider product or whatever over the last kind of 30 years, they usually, I can't ever work out how the hell to use them. And I think what's been really refreshing is actually some getting the likes of your Googles or whatever coming into this marketplace has actually done a huge help. So I've got a Nest at home, and they've spent the money. They've spent the money on making a really nice user interface and making it simple to use. And that, I think, is vitally important as an industry in terms of how we move forward. You know, I always use the thing around the Skybox, you know, Sky Cube and whatever else. It's so simple to use, but there's so much clever going on behind it. So as an industry, I think, you know, we really need to be focused on that user interface and making it simpler for us. So I guess, Jim, I didn't answer your main point, other than the answer was yes back to your main point. But I think that to me is a critical thing where the industry's got it wrong until recently.
Excellent, good. And I've got a question actually via Twitter, which I think maybe I could throw your way, Will. It says, of the about 27 million homes in the UK, way less than 1% will be new every year. So is all this tech retrofit friendly?
I think not all tech's retrofit friendly, but a lot of it is. I think, you know, what's the biggest retrofit exercise in smart going on at the moment is the smart meter rollout. And that actually creates a big infrastructure for existing homes. And BEIS now are looking at how you can generate the benefits from that infrastructure above and beyond knowing how much you're spending on electricity. There's control systems in there, there's comms infrastructure. So there's a lot that can be done with that. And I think it opens the door to people to understand how smart can help them. You know, so the in-home display is kind of the Trojan horse of people getting smart into their existing homes. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, the early sort of wins will be around social care, definitely, obviously energy. And that's kind of where why Nest came in with a thermostat to start with, is because it's kind of the first point of call, the decent business case for getting technology into people's homes, getting more smart technology into people's homes. So yeah, I think it is all retrofittable. Everything's retrofittable or many things are retrofittable. I think when we sort of move to things like battery storage, more renewables, air source heat pumps, or being on district heat networks, then we'll start seeing the value. And that transitions, it's never going to go as fast as the government wants it to, but it is, there it is laid out in policy. So when we start seeing that interaction between the electricity network and the homes, that's when I think the genuine value will come.
Excellent. And we're through to about the last 5 minutes. I've got a question via LinkedIn that would be ideal for Jan, but I just wanted to throw one to Claire. You talked about digital twins. I wonder if you'd just like to offer a comment on that before we close. I was seeing, I think the other day we had a story on Smoom, I think it's Phoenix, Arizona, where they're having a whole digital twin for the whole city. I think that's correct. Could you just offer a quick comment, especially for those who are a bit less familiar with the concept, how that could play out? I'm just going to give you like a minute or two to sum up digital twins. So go.
No pressure. Yeah. So at a very high level, it's about taking, as I said, information and data, and it's not reliant wholeheartedly on BIM. You can do this in a retrofit. We have done and developed a digital twin of an existing building with, you know, old floor plans, but it's about taking data from the physical structure, the physical asset, and digitizing it at its essence, so that you have your O&M manuals in a digital format, so they're easily accessible. So everything is searchable. So when you know, if you want to find out about the HVAC system, you can find that very quickly. HVAC system on the roof, you can under the plant room on the roof, you can get to that very, very quickly. But the important thing is that it's not a one-trick pony, that information and data is constantly kept up to date and validated and kept up to date, so that throughout the life cycle of the building, you have the change in a morphing physical structure with the change in a morphing digital asset that goes side by side by it. So it's just about linking that data and having the correct classifications and standardizations of the data, so that things can be machine readable, so that you can connect. And it's not one solution that's going to fix this. This is a combination of many, many, many solutions. And Nick spoke about simulations as part of it. You know, Will with his you know, energy meters, that's part of it. Jan with the HVAC systems, that's part of it. It's all of these industries coming together, and the integration and the interoperability, so that you can keep this single pane of glass up to date of the digital twin, of the digital asset, of the physical asset.
Excellent. That's a great summary. Thank you very much for that spontaneous explanation. Then we're just about to wind up. Last question I've got for you, Jan. It came in. It's a nice climate and digital connecting question. And they've said via LinkedIn, heating's been the focus for many years, but now cooling is obviously a growing concern. How are smart solutions and systems going to respond to those twin demands?
I think, I mean, there will be more demand for cooling. I think there will be more demand for healthier buildings anyway. And I think it's also clear that very, very warm buildings, hot buildings during summer will not help to be more healthier for people. So I think there will definitely be a bigger demand for cooling. I think smart technology will help it easier to integrate this into one sustainable solution. They're not two separate systems. They should function as one complete system, and I think that's the way forward. And maybe just to comment also what Claire said on digital twin, I think the good thing about digital twins is also that it enables you to simulate new technology in a building. So you have a digital twin, you have new technology, and you can actually simulate what the effect will be of that new technology. So that will be a great enabler to convince people about new technology as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. And I think that brings us to the end there. We are bang on time. So in closing, a big thank you to all our panelists, Nick, Claire, Will, and of course, Jan from our sponsors, Danfoss. Thank you to yourselves out there in Zoom land, our virtual audience, for your comments and some excellent questions. A reminder to check out elementalexpo.com, online community for professionals focused on innovation in heat, water, air, and energy, vital elements within the built environment. As I said at the top of the show, full diary of events on the website, including upcoming webinars and a back catalogue of recent sessions. And you can refer colleagues and friends to see this one after the event as well, if you'd like to recommend it to others. So thank you again. That's it for today. I've been Jim McClelland, editor at Susmeme. Thanks for watching. See you all again soon. Thank you very much.